Welcome back to RKD Group Chat. Today I had the honor of sitting down and chatting with Vivian Borja. Vivian is the Executive Vice President and Chief Marketing Officer for Food for the Poor, a faith-based organization that provides food, housing, healthcare, education, relief services, and so much more to countries primarily in Latin America and the Caribbean. Vivian's story starts in Ecuador, where she was born and raised. And through many twists and turns, working for the government and then later in for-profit marketing and communications, ultimately lands her in the nonprofit space. It's a very impressive resume that I'll let her dive into the details of now.
So it actually starts in Ecuador. So I was born and raised in Ecuador, and I study international relations. So the connection with France, hence, hold this wood. While I was studying international relations, I came to France to study. Also because French is like the diplomatic language. So that was really, and then I was part of the State Department or the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, to be with the official name, in Ecuador. So I was the youngest official. I was 21 at that time. I would spare the details of the year. Not to give away my age. I think the wrinkles are giving it up, but anyways, and then I was lucky enough with the ambassador at the time that I was working. He was in charge of all these multilateral organizations and the relationship with the Ecuadorian government. So I went to work with him, and I had the opportunity to work with United Nations and the Organization of American States. And in those years, it was pretty recent. Big conferences from the United Nations in terms of human rights and women's rights, children's rights. So I was working a lot for the Ecuadorian government with that, and I had to work a lot with nonprofits. It was fascinating. I loved my work there, and in twists and turns of life, I met there a former president of Ecuador, and he had like the largest law firm in the country. And I was helping him because he was coming to the ministry and so forth. It's a long story short. He said these words: "Oh, you should come and work with me, and you should do marketing for my law firm." And I was like, okay. I was 21. I didn't even study marketing at that point. I was like, that sounds fun. I have no idea, but great. So that's really how the marketing path takes shape and form, from the most really out of a left field. And while there, he was a really he passed a couple of years ago, but he was really a great mentor. And he said to me, "You're really good at this thing." We were laughing because I was 21. I had no idea. He was like, "You're really good at this. You should formalize your studies and go to the States and pursue an MBA in marketing." So that's when I came to the States, and the whole idea was to come here for my 2 years for my MBA. But I met my husband, who happens to be French. So always there's that French connection. And then I graduated, and then officially I started my career in the States in marketing at Johnson and Johnson. Amazing organization in the for-profit world, but I would say two important milestones, or those moments that mark you, was meeting that former president who said, "You should do marketing for my law firm," and then having the opportunity after I graduated from the MBA, so fresh out of the university, to go to Johnson and Johnson, because it's really a marketing driven organization. So I could really, it was more than the theoretical principles. It was really putting it in practice. And the marketing department's a huge organization, obviously, but the marketing department was humongous. So there was so much to learn, very process oriented. We needed to follow Six Sigma. So from there starts all this love that I have from stats and numbers and lean processes and Six Sigma. And yep, I did all my career in the for-profit world. Financial services, medical devices. So I was also Microsoft, so very big corporations, I would say Fortune 500 corporations, Western Union, Medtronic, Microsoft, Johnson and Johnson. So, and I had the opportunity to go up the ladder, if you will, and boom, pandemic hits.
I'm going to pause quickly here because after working her way up the ladder for major companies with huge marketing budgets, Vivian shared with me that she had kind of an aha moment in 2020 that led her to transition from the commercial space to the nonprofit space.
I think, like everybody else, self introspection, reflection, all those things, right? Well, you are like bored at home and streaming on Netflix. And again, third milestone then in my life. I'm like, okay, what do we watch now? And I got into this documentary. It's called Happy. And I was very curious. I'm like, oh, let's look at this. And it was very interesting because it's a beautiful documentary. It's simple in its I guess, framework and what they were trying to do. But the whole thing with the documentary is that it's a group of scientists and neurologists and neuroscientists and psychiatrists and psychologists, you name it. And they were coming together and they were saying, well, we've always done these studies about depression. And we know the chemical imbalances in your brain when people get depressed. And there's this all MRI scans. But why we have never done this to understand what happens in the brain uh, when human beings are happy. So it hooked me right in there. And it's incredible because I'm going to give it away if you haven't watched it. Have you watched it, Kate? Haven't? It's really good because I'm gonna I'm gonna ruin it for you though, but it's gonna be interesting. But the whole conclusion, and this is scientifically proven, how it like raises your levels of dopamine and serotonin and all of that in your brain. It's acts of generosity, like real acts of generosity coming from the heart. And the studies were done, and you could see in the MRIs, how your chemicals in the brain are shooting up. But the cool thing about it is that this is across cultures, religions, countries, because they were doing these studies in, the most upscale places in California or in the slums in India. And all it is this common thread and this common denominator, what makes, regardless of any social, cultural situation, what makes humans happy is to help other humans. And it's a very simple yet so beautiful. And I guess with the pandemic, it just hit me. And that's the third milestone. It's like, I gotta do something. I wanna be happy too. I wanna help other people. And, hopefully I'm not sounding too cheesy, but it was real. It was real. And then I would say probably it happened so soon. I wasn't planning to make a change from the for profit world to nonprofit. It was just so sudden and so soon. And I'm on LinkedIn and I see Chief Marketing Officer, Food for the Poor. And I had the documentary fresh because I had watched it like a couple of days before. So I just hit apply. And that's how it got started 2 years ago. So I've been with Food for the Poor 2 years ago. And Food for the Poor has this beautiful mission. I remember during the interview, and it's another cheesy moment, but it really also hit me. I'm talking to our CEO, to Ed, and it was fascinating because Food for the Poor, the name can be deceiving, thinking, oh, it's alleviating hunger, but we do so much more. It's really alleviating poverty in a 360-degree focus, right? It's all the dimensions of poverty. Is he said to me, well, Vivian, we're not just building things, a house or school or a medical facility. We're really building lives. So that was like, so those are like if you will, the big moments in life that are can be very small in nature, but that can, really like change your entire trajectory.
As you'll hear Vivian share, a big reason why she joined the nonprofit world is to have that larger sense of purpose and meaning in her life. But despite an impressive resume leading into her time at Food for the Poor, she shared that she still experienced a little bit of an adjustment period.
It's the purpose and the meaning, I guess. We are all, at the end of the day, I do think all of us, all human beings, we're in the pursuit of that purpose and meaning, right? So having the opportunity, isn't it beautiful that how we find purpose? And going back to the documentary, isn't it beautiful that what really makes us happy are always in this pursuit of happiness? And oftentimes we can easily be trapped into, material things or what have you. But isn't it so beautiful that really scientifically proven what makes us happy is to genuinely serve and help, our fellow human citizens. It was funny because at the beginning, I guess two things were happening to me. uh, at first, I was a little bit self-conscious, like almost apologetically, like, I'm sorry, I'm coming from the for-profit world. I, so that was like my first reaction. And then it was a little bit of also then a shock, because you hear it, yes, that the nonprofit world might be a little bit behind in the adoption of new technology, especially, or best practices. And I think we can all concur that it's true. But now, after these 2 years, I actually feel that coming from the for profit world is actually advantageous to really accelerate our missions, because if any vertical in the world deserves to be in the forefront, is nonprofit. The nonprofit sector, I think it's the other way around. I think we should be, to be looked up and say, in the for-profit guys and girls saying, oh, we should be doing what the nonprofit sector is doing. The smartest and the brightest and the newest technology and their early adopters, I actually think should be like that, because technology should be at the service of human beings. Best practices should be at the service of human beings. So I actually, these 2 years have really shifted my even my self, conscious thing of, oh no, I'm sorry, I'm coming from, no, I'm like, yes, I come from the for-profit world. There is a great best practices, even risk taking in a way, and adopting technology to always evolve. And evolution is really, really important, because the world is constantly changing. It's happening in the for-profit, in the nonprofit world, right? With the transfer of wealth, donors have now new behaviors, are more cost-driven. We're seeing all of that, and you don't want to cease to exist, right? So going back again, I'm also so happy with Johnson and Johnson, because that was how all this management framework of lean thinking and continuous process improvement, all the way from the Toyota production system. It is in achieving added value and zero waste, all those best practices we've seen, and I'm so happy to hear we are adopting that, and also some other nonprofits that are adopting that and adapting to that very successfully. So I actually feel now very proud of having those, that business acumen, if you will, to put it also to good service. Because the more efficient we can be, the more families and communities we can help.
Another big part of Vivian's story and desire to find a larger sense of purpose and meaning is her role as a professor and mentor to college students at Miami-Dade College. As she shared a little bit about her experience, you could sense the joy, warmth, and love for this special part of her life.
Oh, that's going to be a soft spot. So, first, I'm a nerd at heart, and I love academia. So, it's funny because many of my team members, it really started like that. I wasn't noticed, and hopefully it wasn't a lot of lecturing, but I was always very purposeful with my teams to really, okay, we're doing this, but do we all understand? And why are we doing this? And looking at the numbers and always like finding the why, right? And why are we doing this? What are the results that we expect? And one of my team members, like, again, just brought it like, very like, oh, Vivian, I think you're really good at this. Have you ever thought about teaching? And I was, no, but now I'm curious. And I met a professor at AUM, and he invited me for some lectures. And the first one, I just loved it. The energy from the students and the exchange of information and the knowledge sharing. So, ah, I was, yeah, I was like, okay, I'm sold. This is wonderful. This is amazing. So then I started pursuing it, and but I was very purposeful. I wanted to look into, in areas maybe that could be underserved, and more of also going back to my roots, more into Hispanic communities and all of that, community colleges, and I wouldn't say it as a hobby because it's a lot of work. I never worked so hard. And then I easily, being a nerd at heart, easily can get so hyper focused. I will be 5 a.m. preparing, the lessons. But it was such a joy to do it, and having, I guess, the exchange of information and conversation with the students is just fascinating. And I love digital marketing. I love it, love it, love it. So it was really putting two passions together, and I have really enjoyed it. But all respects for all teachers and professors, it's hard work, because we are just thinking at the time of the lecture. I had these classes that were like three. My students, hi. Thank you for bearing with me for 3 hours. Those were long, yes. But it's not only those 3 hours, it's preparing. And then after the class, also, everything that comes and questions, and also being in touch with the students, making sure, because imagine investing those 3 hours, but for me, it was really important to almost confirm. I was obsessed with that. Almost confirm that all my students were really digesting the information.
Before we dive into Vivian's day to day at Food for the Poor, I wanted to take a minute to let her highlight what Food for the Poor's mission and purpose is all about.
The name can be deceiving. It's not only food. The beauty of our mission is that it's really facilitating, right? Paths to alleviate poverty. And poverty is multidimensional. It's not just having a safe house or going to school or food, right? Or malnutrition. It is complex, and it requires partners, and it requires a big effort that we are doing. We work with partners. We really understand all these factors. We have an asset-based approach. So that's another thing that we look. Not every community is the same, right? So when we go into a community, we want really to make the community self-sufficient. It is not providing aid and then having this community being dependent of this international aid. It's really looking at the strengths of these communities and help so they can thrive independently. And it's a big effort. So that is really Food for the Poor. I know the name can be like, well, it's just, food. So that is for me the biggest thing that I always like to share, because the work is incredible. Then that we work in Latin America and the Caribbean, and third, that we've been doing this for over 40 years. So there's a lot of great work that it's being done, and how again we approach these communities. So they are that the end goal in it's, yes, transforming lives, right? Those paths to alleviate poverty, to really transform lives by these communities really being self-sufficient. And we started one person, one family, one community. But that's the beauty when now we can do it at scale and have that multiplier effect.
So I think it's important to share a little bit about Food for the Poor's mission first, because as you'll hear in this next clip, Vivian's most memorable moments from her time at the organization are ones where she's been able to almost live and see the impact of the mission firsthand.
So, a couple of things. Just starting, it was incredible because the mission is beautiful. It's also a Christian organization, faith-based organization. So, being able to be closer to my faith. So, there are a lot of amazing things there. But one of it, the digital transformation and really helping going through the digital transformation of the organization. But I would say highlight was a mission trip to Honduras, and we were visiting one of our sustainable community developments. So those are incredible because you see this community thriving, and how they have houses, and they have community centers, and they have youth centers and schools and healthcare facilities, and then access to water, all these amazing, really, right, the 360 being in play, really to help these communities to be self-sustained, because we always want to exit, right? And I was visiting the school, so this is really nice. Again, all came together, the full circle, and I'm visiting the school, and I'm seeing this it's little kids, and imagine the teacher getting it this bus for hours to be able to teach these kids, and they're all together in the classroom. And I don't know why, but at some moment I'm in the school, and I'm happy because that's what I love, and I see how the kids are learning, and how we, thanks to our generous donors, all these kids, very underserved. They used to live in a dumpster in Honduras. Now they live in this thriving community and are studying, and they're with their school uniforms. But I don't know, it just hit me. So I had to leave the classroom, and I'm like leaning against the wall, just like soaking it all in, being, very pensive, I guess. And all of a sudden I feel this warm embrace, and there's like two little girls that I think they noticed that I left the classroom, and then I'm all like, in my mood, and they had the biggest, brightest, most beautiful smiles, and they're like hugging me. And I'm like, oh, this is it. This is it. This is it. This is the why. This is my why, at least. This is my why of why I'm so happy to be at Food for the Poor. And it's a joy, and actually a privilege and honor to serve for the mission. That is exactly it. This beautiful tiny moment.
So, a typical day for Vivian is meeting heavy, but her perspective on the daily balance between marketing and fundraising, or as she likes to call it, being fundable and findable, is something that I think many listening can probably relate to.
First, a typical day, how it looks: a lot of meetings. A lot of meetings and a lot of emails, but I enjoy it. I do have quite a large team, a wonderful team. But I would say we're very data driven. So we're always analyzing our numbers and optimizing and making decisions based on what the data is telling us, and then implementing that to best serve the communities we serve, and also in terms of stewardship for our donors and their gifts. And for us, I like to say that branding first, funding second, right? And we work on a scale that we want to be fundable. So our theory of change, what is that broader social impact that Food for the Poor is really working hard for? alleviating poverty in Latin America and the Caribbean, but really empowering these communities, all of that, having it in our strategic plan. So being very purposeful on that theory of change, on creating that positive impact. So that comes first. And then comes marketing, right? And now that we're fundable, let's be findable. So working on our brand so they can find us and we can present our unique value proposition. So all the marketing, we apply it, all the best practices, all the terminology, we apply it. And then of course, I'm working on in terms of engaging our donors, communicating with our donors based on their interests, updating our donors on how we're stewarding their dollars, and the impact, constantly communicating that impact that they actually help us achieve.
Vivian also shared two challenges her team has been facing in today's fundraising landscape that I wanted to highlight here in case it's something that your organization is going through as well, or maybe you can take a little bit of advice from.
I think it's really, and me again coming from the for-profit world, is really adopting and adapting to a digital world. And really, it's not an easy task. We need to understand it, embrace it, and actually push forward, because it's the most efficient way. It's the way the world lives now. It's also the most preferred method. We have put out several surveys to our donors. It's their preferred method. So really, and digital marketing is a science. It's not just a website or an email or social media. It's so much more to it. So really understanding how it all works and embracing it. So that, I would say, it's my priority number one. And then priority number two, also in the US, I think we need to be inclusive. And with that, I guess me, probably then, because I'm Hispanic, there's such a big Hispanic community here, and they're under-solicited. So there is a big opportunity there to bring Hispanic communities, which is the fastest growing minority in the US, and in culturally and charity, it's deep in the DNA. You see all these families that send their money back to their countries, right? So I would say they're one of the most generous diasporas. So also working into really engaging those Hispanic donors to get acquainted with the brand and the mission and the work and the impact.
At the end of that clip, you heard Vivian mention the importance of inclusive and diverse marketing. And I wanted to spend a little bit more time discussing her perspective on inclusive marketing, first because it's such an important piece of her work, but also because she's Hispanic and she's been able to leverage her lived experiences to help Food for the Poor connect with Hispanic donors.
For sure. And I think it's understanding also the audience, right? And having an audience first approach, and really understanding that Hispanics have a own set of values and beliefs and trigger points and or passion points, and they're very family oriented, community oriented. Religion is a very important factor in life, children. So it's really understanding and being culturally relevant. It's not just translating what you have here to Spanish, and that will make it. It's really understanding the audience, like you do it for in any marketing exercise, right? And make it, I think, very, very important to make it culturally relevant. It's not just a translation. I would say this is the only time that I will bring my own background into play, because I get it. I get it. I really understand the culture. I really understand the passion points. I really understand the differences in how we speak. Somebody in Cuba would say popcorn in Spanish, and how somebody in Ecuador would say, there's all this cultural difference, because sometimes we want to have this blanket approach, Hispanics, and it's not even that. Yeah. So I would say for sure that is something that my background, and I try to be very unbiased. And then, very matter of fact, it's the only time that I would lean into it, because I know I get it. I've had the experience.
So, as we wrapped up our time together, Vivian shared two Japanese terms with me that I think so perfectly sum up her journey, her heart, and her desire to find this balance of purpose in her work life. I also think they perfectly sum up the entire purpose and meaning behind the nonprofit sector. So, as we close out this episode, I'll leave you with this.
I'm obsessed with this, is with all these like Japanese terms in from lean thinking. So there's two that I love, and I try to make them almost like my motto. So one is wabi sabi, and it's really finding beauty in the imperfection. It's such a beautiful concept, and once you really absorb it, you set yourself free to do wonderful things, and not, not um, stay. It allows you to get unstuck. And there's the other one, and I want to find, because it's beautiful. It's the intersection of what you love to do, what you're good at, and it's ikigai. But I would love to read it for you, because I hope I can find it soon, though. So it's the intersection of what you love, what you're good at, what the world needs, and what you can get paid for. So it's I really think, going back to that question of what we can say to anyone thinking about joining that nonprofit world, you will find your ikigai.
Group Thinkers is a production of RKD Group. For more information, including how you can partner with RKD to accelerate growth for your fundraising and nonprofit marketing needs, visit rkdgroup.com.